Ladies and gentlemen, could you please take your seats? أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، السادة الحضور، رجاء التكرم بأخذ مقاعدكم حتى يتسنى لنا البدء بالبرنامج. Again? Okay. أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، السادة الحضور، رجاء التكرم بالجلوس حتى يتسنى لنا البدء في البرنامج. أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، السادة الحضور، السيدات والسادة، رجاء التكرم بأخذ مقاعدكم لنبدأ بالجلسة. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please take your seats so that we can start? حضرات السيدات والسادة الحضور، الرجاء أخذ مقاعدكم لنبدأ بالجلسة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سنبدأ قريبا. الرجاء أخذ مقاعدكم. حضرات السيدات والسادة، رجاء الجلوس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. قبل أن نبدأ برنامجنا أود الإشارة أنه يوجد ترجمة فورية ب3 لغات: العربية والإنجليزية والفرنسية، وتتوفر أجهزة الترجمة في الخلف من القاعة والقنوات كما ترونها على الشاشة. Before we start, kindly note that there is simultaneous interpretation in 3 languages: Arabic, English, and French, and translation devices are available at the back of the hall, and the channels are as shown on the screen. الآن دعوني أرحب بكم وأرحب بالضيوف الكرام في منتدى القطاع الخاص لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، والذي تنظمه مؤسسات القطاع الخاص التابعة لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، وهي المؤسسة الإسلامية لتأمين الاستثمار وائتمان الصادرات، المؤسسة الإسلامية لتنمية القطاع الخاص، والمؤسسة الدولية الإسلامية لتمويل التجارة. وبدعم من منتدى الأعمال لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية ثقة، والشركاء المحليين من مؤسسات حكومية وقطاع خاص بالمملكة العربية السعودية وجميع الدول الأعضاء. أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، سيداتي وسادتي الحضور الكريم، إن الهدف الرئيسي من تنظيم هذه الفعاليات هو تسليط الضوء على أنشطة مجموعة البنك وخدماتها ومبادراتها في الدول الأعضاء بما فيها المملكة العربية السعودية، من خلال تعزيز خدماتها القطاع الخاص الذي يتطلع إلى الاستثمار في المملكة العربية السعودية وتعزيز رؤية المملكة العربية السعودية لعام 2030 والشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص في الدول الأعضاء. علاوة على ذلك، فإن هذا الحدث بفعالياته المختلفة سيوفر عروض لفرص التجارة والاستثمار ومسابقة للشركات الناشئة، والتي سيتم خلالها ولأول مرة تقديم جائزة باسم مؤسسات القطاع الخاص بمجموعة البنك للمؤسسات المتميزة. هذا وسيتضمن برنامج المنتدى عقد لقاءات ثنائية B2B and B2G على هامش هذه الفعالية بهدف التواصل وعقد الشراكات وإقامة علاقات تجارية وتبادل الخبرات وعرض قصص النجاح. ونرحب بجميع الحضور السادة محافظي البنك الإسلامي للتنمية وكبار المسؤولين الحكوميين والرؤساء والمديرين التنفيذيين في شركات القطاع الخاص والمستثمرين وغرف التجارة والصناعة وهيئات تشجيع التجارة والاستثمار. ونرحب أيضاً بالمؤسسات المالية التنموية الإقليمية والدولية. كما يسرنا أن يشاركنا اليوم كبار رجال الأعمال من جميع أنحاء العالم، ويسعدنا مشاركة الكثير من المتحدثين والذين هم على دراية واسعة بالقطاع الخاص والتنمية الاقتصادية، وأتمنى لكل الحضور الاستفادة من هذه الندوات القيمة. والآن سيداتي وسادتي، دعونا نشاهد مقطع فيديو قصير عن مؤسسات القطاع الخاص التابعة لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية.
For countries to develop their economies, achieve sustainable development goals, and create new jobs, they need to have access to finance and be able to mitigate political and commercial risks. In line with the emerging needs of the private sector in its members' countries, the Islamic Development Bank Group, ISDB Group, created 3 dedicated business arms. Working with ISDB Group entities, private sector and SME clients get access to needed resources and support their own growth, which includes Islamic trade finance solutions, project investment, and Islamic insurance against business risk. Attracting investments and exports is vital to a thriving economy. The Islamic Cooperation for the Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISIC, helps OIC member countries achieve this goal through the provision of its insurance and reassurance solutions. These Sharia-compliant solutions enlarge the scope of cross-border trade and enable foreign investment by giving you confidence to enter new markets in a risk-mitigated manner. Our solutions can help unlock transactions, facilitating foreign investment while making your business more competitive. The Islamic Cooperation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, is mandated to support the private sector in its member countries. ICD builds partnerships to establish collective financing. ICD focuses its financing on development projects that aim to create job opportunities, encourage exports, and boost the economic growth of its member countries. In addition, ICD extends lines of finance to support small and medium enterprises, which drive the country's economic development. Briefly, ICD's solutions will help your business achieve its ambitions. We founded the International Islamic Trade Finance Cooperation, ITFC, to catalyze trade. By enhancing intra-OIC trade, we contribute to the growth of imports and exports in our member countries to strengthen their economies. Integrated trade solutions, including trade finance and trade development programs, enables our member countries and private sector clients to access various trade solutions and benefit from cross-border trade activities. ISDB Group entities partner with different private and public stakeholders. These partnerships play a crucial role in enhancing resilience to address common challenges, achieve shared goals, fostering collaboration, leverage resources, and create new solutions. Building resilience through multi-sector partnerships can strengthen communities' capacity to withstand and recover from shocks, promoting long-term sustainability and well-being. Together, our organizations address every challenge your business faces through a comprehensive partnership formula. ICD finances your projects. ITFC finances and boosts your trade deals. ISIC ensures your investment and export transactions. And ISDB's Group Business Forum, FICA, promotes synergy among ISDB Group member countries. The result is a perfect ecosystem for your business to grow.
والآن سيداتي وسادتي أود دعوة معالي الدكتور محمد سليمان الجاسر رئيس مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية في كلمة ترحيبية بالحضور، فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، ضيوفنا الكرام، السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني أن أرحب بكم جميعاً في الدورة 11 من منتدى القطاع الخاص لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، التي نعقدها على هامش الاجتماعات السنوية 48 لمجموعة البنك. إن الهدف الأساس من تنظيم هذا المنتدى هو إتاحة الفرصة للمستثمرين ورجال الأعمال وصناع القرار من البلدان الأعضاء لفتح قنوات للتواصل وعقد الشراكات وإقامة العلاقات التجارية مع نظرائهم في البلدان الأعضاء الأخرى، وعرض قصص النجاح من أجل تبادل الخبرات ذات الصلة. ويعد المنتدى فرصة أيضاً للتعرف عن كثب على مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية ومؤسساتها وما تقدمه من خدمات ودعم للقطاع الخاص تحديداً، بغية الاستفادة من هذه الخدمات ورفع مستوى التعاون بين البلدان الأعضاء. وإننا في مجموعة البنك نبذل قصارى جهدنا من أجل دعم التعاون المشترك بين البلدان الأعضاء، وذلك من خلال المساهمة في تمويل المشاريع الاستثمارية والعمليات التجارية وائتمان الصادرات وتأمين الاستثمارات. ففي مجال ائتمان الصادرات وتأمين الاستثمارات ما فتئت المؤسسة الإسلامية لتأمين الاستثمار وائتمان الصادرات، وهي الذراع التأميني لمجموعة البنك ومؤسسة التأمين المتعددة الأطراف الوحيدة في العالم التي تقدم خدمات موافقة لأحكام الشريعة، تواصل جهودها في تقديم حلول تأمينية متميزة لعملائها بهدف التخفيف من الأخطار التجارية والسياسية المتعلقة بالتجارة والاستثمار في بلداننا الأعضاء. وقد كان لدعم المؤسسة أثره الواضح في مساعدة البلدان الأعضاء على التعافي من تداعيات جائحة كوفيد-19 وتجاوز آثار اضطرابات سلاسل التوريد الناتجة عن النزاع الدائر في شرق أوروبا، والمضي قدما في تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة، وذلك من خلال دعم التجارة والاستثمار في سنة 2022.
Hello, is this better? أهلا وسهلا. In 2023, ISDB recognizes that in a post-COVID world, one which is strengthened by artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence, in order to help its member countries navigate the new normal and grow stronger despite uncertainties on a global level, it must increase the resilience of its member countries. The bank and its entities have a unique capacity to develop the private sector as a powerful engine for inclusive growth and stability. We know that ISDB makes unbankable projects bankable, can jumpstart businesses, de-risks investments to increase development. The bank's mandate is to build resilient economic ecosystems, ones that can deal with the energy crisis, food security, climate change, and high inflation. And this requires a modernized, coordinated, strategic, focused approach. One relative recent creation that applies this approach is the Technical Coordination Committee, which brings together ITFC, ISIC, and ISD to facilitate and coordinate deals on projects. Our panel today, Building Resilience Through Private Sector Partnerships, has the decision makers in all those three entities. But it also brings the government and the private sector to discuss how the private sector can increase resilience that is needed for growth. All of our panelists bring a wealth of knowledge in their respective sectors and industries. I would like to call to the stage our host, Mr. Engineer, His Excellency Engineer Hani Salim Sumbul, the Chief Executive Officer of ITFC and the Acting CEO of ICD. He is heading and coordinating the work between those two entities and has had for more than 35 years experience in development, banking, serving in a variety of technical and leading positions, including the creation of ISIC. الصوت. Okay. I'd like to also call to the stage Mr. Osama Al-Qaisi, CEO of ISIC, who has over 28 years of diverse experience in insurance and takaful. He is also the Secretary General of Aman Union, a professional union of commercial and non-commercial insurers for the OIC countries, and has authored numerous industry articles pertaining to all aspects of insurance and risk management. With us as well, Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation and the first female Minister of Tourism there. Previous to that, she was an economic advisor to the chief economist of the IMF. And in 2021, her book, Stakeholder Engagement Through Economic Diplomacy, was published. She is also the author of numerous journal articles on financial systems, monetary policy framework, sustainable development, and climate finance. Our private sector representative is Mr. Mohammed Al-Qattani, who is the chairman and chief executive officer of At-Tijari Wafa Bank, which was created in 1904, and is North Africa's leading bank and the 7th largest in Africa, as well as the biggest in Morocco, and has special interest in SMEs and private sector development. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending as well. We have standing room attendance, which attests to how important this subject is. So before we start, and sometimes we throw around a lot of terms thinking that everybody agrees on what it means. Can we define resilience? ما هو الصمود? دكتور القيسي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for joining us for this opening session of the Private Sector Forum. And I'm happy to see many faces of our governors, His Excellency, our chairman, and shareholders and partners here today. Very important question that has lots of controversy. There's no consensus in respect of resilience about a single definition when it comes to resilience, be it from the private sector or be it from the public sector.
I see you're already hedging your insurance.
De-risking. But the way what I'm leading to here is that there is different challenges that are facing different countries in the world. And usually when you talk about the sovereigns, they are the ones that they are setting the policy, they are setting as well how the governance is structured within the institutions, be it on the private sector and the public sector. And they are in different stages of development, let alone that the priorities for governments are different, subject to the economic advancement of their economies, and as well as fragility that plays a big role. But we have been discussing it this morning, and definitely adaptability is the key here for resilience. You have to be adaptable in order for you to absorb shocks that your economy is suffering as a government and certainly in respect of the private sector.
Engineer Sumbul, the word adaptability is probably like married to you. This is a word that we have heard you use over and over and over again. Can you explain to us, in resilience, how does adaptability work, in particular with the entities that you are heading?
Thank you very much, everyone, and I'm very happy also to see all the partners here with us today. And I think we're tackling really a very important subject. I think we have to agree from the beginning there is no common definition for resilience. Every institution has its own way of really defining based on their own functions and the work and the environment that they're working in. So I think sometimes, you look at, our definition can be summarized at the end to the word adaptability. However, many institutions, they have to go through a long process related to anticipating, the future problems and the ability actually to look at the future problems, and also finding the right identification of what is happening around, and then this will take you to solutions, and then will take you to recovery, and then move on, as they say, looking ahead. Any institutions can really have that, needs to be very, I would say, alert that without this, institutions cannot be resilient. In ITFC, we felt that, and also in ICD today, we felt that being resilient in this global upheavals and volatile environment, I think it's more important than anything else to really provide sustainable services to member countries. So resilience, in my view, is to how to adapt quickly. We have been through many frequent, I would say, crises that built muscles for institutions who were planning actually ahead of time.
So thank you so much. And I think, Dr. Arania, when we talk about resilience, I think the government right now, governments all over the world, but in particular in our areas, have faced tremendous challenges. I know that you can talk about this from 360 almost, mashallah. In particular with governmental point of view, can you talk to us, what does the resilience mean?
Well, thank you very much. Let me start by thanking the Islamic Development Bank for the invitation, ITFC, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Engineer Hani mentioned that there's not a single definition for resilience, but let me try and go back to OECD, since OECD always provides for investments and for private sector pointers and guidelines for all of us. And when we look at the OECD's definition of resilience, it's the ability of households, communities, governments, private sector, i.e. all stakeholders that constitute the nation, to be able to absorb and recover from shocks. And this can only be done, as, and I quote Engineer Hani, by trying to adapt and transform the different structures. And structures here are very important because in tranquil times, we are supposed to be able to change our structures so that we are ready to face the long-term challenges of crises. Today we're in a situation of multiple crises, be it from COVID, followed by the geopolitical implications from the war in Europe, and then most recently, of course, the increase in the cost of financing that affects countries, affects households, affects SMEs, affects private sector, and has also created a very tough environment for accessibility as well as for a perception of doing a project. And that is something that I would like to elaborate on a little bit more. You asked me about governments, and I believe that in building resilience, it requires a multi-stakeholder approach. Government being the entity that designs policies, tries to put in place regulations in order to promote private sector, in order to engage the international community. It has a lot on its shoulder. And let me go also to being Minister of International Cooperation. The global partnerships for effective cooperation is something that we believe in very much. And this is based on 4 key principles. Country ownership, and it's very important that as you are designing programs with different IFIs, and here we're with one of the very important regional ones, the Islamic Development Bank, country ownership is very important so that the national strategies are reflected in your partnership with the different institutions. Also inclusive partnerships, so we work with the Islamic Development Bank, with the World Bank, with the African Development Bank, with so many other bilateral and multilateral institutions. It's very important to have these synergies between the different partners. And then the third, be driven by results, and then finally, transparency and accountability. So I think these are the 4 principles that are also extremely important from a government side to be able to have an inclusive process to improve resilience.
Yes, please.
I want to say something. I think Dr. Rania is right. I think the word here is also planning, because resilience is active. And when you say active, that's when you are describing an organizations, whether it's a government, as Dr. Rania said, being a resilient, that means it's in a continuous active planning for the future. And that's what is really, just want to emphasize on that very particular point, is the activity.
It is a very important point, and in the end, the normal citizen has 2 touch points. It is the government and the private sector. And so we've understood the government's overall view. Your Excellency أستاذ محمد، إذا ممكن تكلمنا أكثر عن القطاع الخاص وكيفية يتعامل مع الصمود والتعامل مع الgovernments طبعا international financial multilaterals and bilaterals.
أولاً قبل كل شيء أود أن أشكر مجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية على الدعوة وعلى حفاوة الاستقبال وجودة التنظيم. وبالنسبة لمفهوم الصمود، نحن كشركة بنكية من القطاع الخاص نتعامل يومياً مع عدة ملايين من الشركات جد الصغيرة والإسميز في 15 دولة إفريقية التي مرت بأزمات قوية إثر الجائحة الصحية كوفيد-19 والحرب الروسية الأوكرانية الحالية وتداعياتها. وكبنك خاص عندنا تقييم للمخاطر للشركات، وأصبح الصمود من المعايير المهمة لتقييم متانة الشركات التي نمولها، والقاسم المشترك لمفهوم الصمود. نحن كبنك في إطار معاملاتنا اليومية مع هذه الشركات هو الرؤية الاستباقية والمرونة وتفعيل إجراءات عملية جد مهمة للحد من تداعيات الأزمة على النشاط التجاري والصناعي لهذه الشركات. فبالنسبة لي التكيف السريع والمرونة والحوكمة والتنظيم والتسيير داخل هذه الشركات هو جد مهم، وكانت لنا تجربة جد قيمة في هذا الميدان، وبكل تواضع تعلمنا كثيرا من شركائنا ومن عملائنا يوميا من ناحية الصمود. وجل الشركات الحمد لله طورت قابليتها على التكيف، لأنها كانت عملية في مواجهة وقع الأزمة. ولكن كذلك الدروس المهمة التي استفدنا منها بأن هنالك سياسات عمومية قامت بها بعض الدول كانت استباقية وجريئة رغم حجم الموارد الهائلة التي تتطلبها هذه الأزمة المهمة التي يعرفها العالم الآن. إذن الدرس المهم بالنسبة لي شخصيا هو أن الشركات والعملاء قاموا بعمل جبار من ناحية التكيف السريع ومن ناحية الابتكار، حتى الانوفيشن، حتى في الشركات جد الصغيرة والشركات المتوسطة كانت عندها قابلية لابتكار يعني أنماط جديدة للعمل لتحسين الإنتاجية والتنافسية داخل هذه الشركات والحد من وقع الأزمة. وشكرا.
الله يعطيكم العافية. اتفضل.
تعقيب بسيط بالنسبة لما ذكره الأستاذ محمد. الحقيقة إضافة إلى ذلك يمكن شاهدنا كمثال خلال جائحة كورونا أنه بالرغم من أيضا من قيام الجهات اللي ذكرها الأستاذ محمد بتقديم الكثير من الخدمات وتمكين أيضا القطاعات المختلفة لكي تقاوم وتصمد أمام الجائحة، إلا أن هناك الكثير من الشركات اختفت. ولازم نتفق على هذا الشيء، أنه في كثير من الشركات اللي اختفت خلال هذه الفترة نظرا لعدم الحقيقة التخطيط المسبق. Resilience is not yesterday. Resilience is a long process that needs to be really followed. Thank you.
Allah يعطيكم العافية. So this is really important. So the corona virus, the stress on the economy that it placed and governments as well, the Russian-Ukrainian war that is going on that also has placed extreme stresses on the value chain system. This brings me to the next questions, which is to Mr. Osama Al-Qaisi. In addition to the geopolitical risks, in addition to this new medical problems that are happening, new viruses coming in that can affect the whole world, there is the environmental stresses. How can ISIC help its member states build resilience against the energy crisis, food insecurity, climate change, and basically support the private sector?
Thank you for the question. ISIC is a multilateral insurance institution that is focused on de-risking in order for us to make projects and trade viable in our member states, addresses these matters at different levels. The very first level, it is institutional. Internally, we have to be ready. After that, it is on the operational level. And last but not least, an issue that we always stress on is partnerships. On the institutional level, ISIC is very much in tune of the changing landscape and the requirement for us to be adaptable. We go back to resilience. We have to be adaptable as well ourselves in order for us to have our team ready to react properly. That goes through the process of training, of acquiring new knowledge. Education is key as well, in order for us to be able to respond to the changing demand of our member countries, specifically, as you mentioned, in the case of climate change. Similarly to that, on the operational side, ISIC has set up for 2023 a certain percentage, which is 10 percentage point of our yearly production, to be focused on climate change business. And this is something that we usually procure while working closely with our member states, understanding their commitment under the Paris Agreement, and similarly to understand their national development plan and where climate change falls within these national development plans. We have been greatly successful in that aspect, and there are as well great programs at the level of the group where we are as well sharing with them. Last but not least, an extremely important point is partnerships. Partnerships at the level of the ECAs. We have been very active in 2023 in reigniting old relationships and striking new relationships. We have relationships that we have been working in Japan, ECAs, the likes of NEXI, for example. Similarly, on the climate change, we have strike relationships with Masdar of the United Arab Emirates and IRENA as well for the nuclear energy as a solution for the usual energy that is being used right now for carbon-based, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, as an insurance institution, we cannot but mention the extreme relationships that we have with the international reinsurance market. And this is a big thank you that I would like to give from here to the reinsurance market, that I see some of our colleagues, they are represented here, be it on the continent in Europe or being at Lloyd's of London. Without the support of the reinsurance, we cannot leverage the capacity that we have, nor we can start bringing capacity building and resource mobilization from the reinsurance market to support the international financial institutions.
So a lot of these partnerships are extremely important, but perhaps in the private sector, أستاذ محمد القيطاني، إذا ممكن تخبرنا أكثر عن كيف استطعتم أنكم تعالجوا قضايا التي فيها مشاكل الأمن الغذائي والتغير المناخي، خصوصاً أن موراكو ربما هي من أكثر الدول التي عملت على هذا الموضوع.
شكراً على هذا السؤال. بالنسبة للمغرب وكل دول إفريقيا التي نعمل بها، هنالك تحديات جد قوية، تحديات بيئية وتحديات كذلك تتعلق بالأمن الغذائي، وتحديات تتعلق بإدماج الشباب والمرأة في برامج التنمية. كما تعلمون أفريقيا في حدود في أفق 2050 سنكون 2,500,000,000 نسمة، وجلهم سيكونون من الشباب، والنساء يمثلون 50%. هذه طاقة جد هائلة، ولكن طاقة جد هائلة إذا كانت هنالك سياسات عمومية ناجعة التي تمكن الدول الإفريقية وكذلك الدول العربية الشقيقة من النجاح في الانتقال الطاقي من جهة، وفي ترشيد المياه لحاجيات الزراعة والفلاحة، لأن البوتنشل بالقارة الإفريقية يمكنه من تأمين الغذاء لجميع دول العالم، لجميع ساكنة العالم، إذا كانت هنالك سياسات عمومية ناجعة وترشيد للمياه وإقامة صناعة غذائية تمكن من تحويل المواد الأولية بدولنا إلى مواد للمستهلك، لأن الذين يستفيدون الآن من المواد الأولية هي الشركات العالمية التي تحقق قيمة إضافية جد مهمة على عاتق ساكنة القارة الإفريقية. والمغرب في هذا المجال يعني قام باستراتيجية ناجحة من الناحية الزراعية فقام باستراتيجية المغرب الأخضر، والآن استراتيجية جديدة في أفق 2030 Green Generation، التي ستمكن المغرب من دعم وتعزيز طاقاته الإنتاجية في الميدان الزراعي، وكذلك تحقيق قيمة مضافة لتحويل المواد الأولية الزراعية إلى منتوجات للمستهلك المغربي وكذلك للتصدير، لأنه قطاع جد مهم من ناحية الصادرات. وبالنسبة للطاقة، دخل المغرب بقوة، وهو يعد من أول الدول الإفريقية في هذا الميدان، بحيث أن الطاقات المتجددة سواء الطاقة الرياحية أو الشمسية ستمثل أكثر من 50% من الإنتاج في حدود 2035. وهذا البرنامج الآن احنا تعدينا 40% إلى الآن، ويعد المغرب يعني مثال ناجح في هذا الميدان من ناحية الطاقات المتجددة. وبالنسبة للشباب والمرأة، دخلنا في سياسة للشمول المالي لفتح المجال للشباب، خاصة حاملي المشاريع الصغرى. وهنا إذا سمحتم دقيقة واحدة لتجربة ناجحة قمنا بها في المغرب، والآن سنقوم بها إن شاء الله في الدول الإفريقية التي نشتغل بها، وهي فتح ما نسميه نحن دار المقاول. دار المقاول هو شبكة من الفروع تعطي النصح والاستشارة والتدريب والتكوين لحامل المشاريع الصغرى مجانيا، كانوا عملاء أو غير عملاء للمملكة. وكانت هذه نقطة مفيدة جدا، وفي ظرف 7 سنوات واكبنا ما يعادل 1,200,000 حامل مشروع صغير بالمغرب، وواكبنا أعمالهم لمدة 3 سنوات. إذن الانتقال الطاقي، ترشيد المياه، والشباب والمرأة في إدماجهم في التنمية.
الله يعطيكم العافية. There's a saying that says, show me the money. As acting head of ICD and ITFC, and what are the private sector resources and funding mechanisms that the community, the private sector can tap into from ISDB to help them create similar projects that like Dr. Ustaz Muhammad Al-Qattani discussed, or to help with I6 insurance? Where is the money?
The funding is everywhere, I guess. I think the issue is not only the financing. If I want to start with, you know, as they say, financing is not the only needed actually for any development process. And all what you need, as truly mentioned by His Excellency Mr. Muhammad, that you need really to have the capacity to absorb, to utilize, and also to be able to implement whatever that is going to be in the process. So that's why I think in ITFC and ICD, both institutions, we value a lot really this kind of diversity in really providing products for member countries and for the private sector. In ITFC, of course, we have, as you know, that we have been also working, for a long time to really build the trust in the markets. So that's why today we were very much being successful in really getting very strong partnership, especially from international and national, regional institutions that believed actually in ITFC. And actually we have been really ranked, very high in terms of in the book runners of Bloomberg as being an institution that is really providing a really good or leading resource mobilization from the private sector and other institutions. Dealing with that, knowing, in ITFC, private sector has been always there, in ICD is the mandate. So both institutions do really tackle all the products or develop products that is suitable for the actually for the private sector. We have maybe 3 main areas that we are working on. One of them is the resource mobilization, where we work, as I said, with international organization. This is one of the things because today's needs cannot be met at all by just one institution. We need to really to partner up with our partners to be able to achieve. And we have many examples. You know, today, as I can say, without the Africa Exim Bank, without Badia, without, of course, the Saudi Exim Bank and other institutions in the regions, with the national and local banks here in Saudi Arabia, local banks in Morocco, and local banks we were not able actually to mobilize more than almost now close to 50 billion US dollar of financing in only since 2008. The second one is actually we do support by providing and extending financing. And financing, of course, facilitated the importation of all the strategic commodities and goods for member countries and also the different sectors in the economy. We have very much valued a lot, really, the work with the SMEs. And here comes the partnership where you can really work with local international organizations, financial organizations to support the SMEs. And we have many examples, of course, by extending line of financing to national and international banks so that they can re-lend it or use it for the SMEs' needs. The last one is, of course, as I said, financing alone will not do the work, so that means we have to really create trade development and investment development, products that can focus on capacity building, training, and work on the inclusivity. Today we cannot exclude anybody from the development process. Of course, Mr. Muhammad mentioned already women and youth. They are actually the ones who are, ranking as at the top priority of both institutions. So we, in ICD, for example, we focus also on helping the entrepreneurship by providing also support, helping SMEs through line of financing. ITFC the same. We have many flagship programs today that supports women. For example, we lead also the She Trade initiative. The She Trade initiative is a global initiative. We have a very good project in Egypt, and also we have also the same in Morocco. Both are actually to support and empower women in these countries to be able actually to do business and access new markets. So I think the word partnership here is very important, and without really, if we look at the financing gap, I'm sure that you know that for the SDGs today, you need from 5 to 7 trillion from now until 2000 and I would say 30, and then the overall needs for the SDGs can go up to 500 to 700 billion by the time 2050. I think this huge gaps in trade finance, for example, is more than 150 billion in Africa, almost like 200 in Asia, requires this kind of resource mobilizations that requires us to work together.
Well, thank you so much. We understand how huge the gap is for the SDG financing. Dr. Rania, I'd like you to step away from the Egyptian government point of view, but to give us a more global idea, especially with the OIC countries. Are governments in member countries taking sufficient measure to create a favorable environment for the growth and success of the private sector? And what are the ways in which different governments can encourage private sector participation in SDGs and SDG financing, especially that this is becoming a major priority with the gap in funding?
Well, thank you very much. And I mean, following up on a lot of what Engineer Hani mentioned and also Chairman Mohammed, when we take a look at government policies, there are always three pillars that come into mind because they are the ones that define the relationship between different institutions. First, policies need to be or push for inclusion, and inclusion here are youth, women, and this is, again, a common denominator across different institutions. The second is that the policies need to also foster digitization, and this is again one of the key common denominators, be it that private sector builds on innovation and requires innovation. So any policies that can push in that direction are one that would be able to induce private sector engagement, but also the financing that is required to push it and foster it forward. The third is green. The green agenda is extremely important. Today, for a government, for a private sector, for SME, to access finance, it has to actually incorporate many pointers that are related to climate change, green, be it adaptation or mitigation. So I think that keeping these 3 points, which are common denominators across the different strategies with institutions, is quite vital. The other point which is key for private sector engagement in any country is the access to finance. Today, with the increasing interest rates globally, the need for concessional finance to be able to de-risk the private engagement in different countries. And if we take a look at the statistics, most of the downgrades are happening in developing countries. Most of the, the perceived risks are much more in many of the countries that are clients in the Islamic Development Bank and other IFIs. So this concept of de-risking is an extremely important one. It can only happen if the international community, be it the MDBs particularly, and I'm very happy when you looked at the video with the Islamic Development Bank family, you have the financing for the projects, and then you have also the guarantees. Guarantees are extremely important to be able to push forward private sector. The same philosophy if we take a look at the World Bank with MIGA and so forth. So there needs to be, as was mentioned by Engineer Hani, the complementarity between the partners to avail the financing that would help de-risk private sector engagement. And let me link this to COP27. Egypt is the president of COP27, and we had the meetings in Sharm el-Sheikh at the end of 2022. And one of the key aspects was how can we push financing for climate action in the countries that need it the most. The countries that need it the most, that are not polluters, but have to deal with these outcomes, require that their financing be just. And just here is meeting the national responsibility, but also pushing for the development pathways. And this goes back to the SDG. The gap for SDG financing between now and 2030 is big. No government on its own can do it. So it's the government, it's the private sector, it's the NGOs. So this idea of inclusive partnership is extremely important. But governments need to be able to collate the private sector so that the national goals are aligned with the global goals. That's number one. And number two, to also make sure that the ESG principles or the climate principles are also well identified. You told me not to speak about Egypt, but I can't miss the opportunity.
Not to first speak about Egypt, but I want to know about Egypt.
But just in terms of one example, which is very important for us, where we are collating financing for climate action, is Egypt's country platform for the nexus of water, food, and energy, the NOWAFI program. And NOWAFI, of course, is fulfilling pledges in Arabic. And the idea was to create, from our 2050 climate strategy, bankable projects that would benefit from the concessional climate finance with the idea of bringing in private sector. So there's an energy pillar, very similar to what was mentioned on Morocco, where the goal of bringing 42% of our energy mix into renewables by 2030. And also have water as well as food projects. So it's very important for every country to own the projects, to be very clear about them, to be able to mobilize private sector interest, and then financing, which is concessional, to be able to de-risk the cost for the private sector and hence move forward with this. So I just want to say that also today with the World Bank evolution, the roadmap to the evolution, the calls for MDB structure reforms and so forth, a new concept which is global public goods comes into, into the forefront. and more call for complementarity between the different IFIs and the different financing institutions.
Can I just actually just ask, because I have a question for both of you. What Dr. Rania talked about, the synergy, the changes, the evolution, the World Bank, this is also happening in ISDB, where there is going to be a lot of different initiatives, and we heard about the TCC committee that allows for more synergies for people to partner, for manufacturers, producer funds, and private businesses to partner with the bank. So I want to hear a little bit more about the change in ISDB, one group, one goal, and the things that are happening right now that everybody would be interested in hearing. So for both of you, maybe Your Excellency, Mr. Osama Al-Qaisi first, and then Engineer Sumbul.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Definitely any institution and the likes of the Islamic Development Bank Group, if it does not evolve, we will become very irrelevant to our member states. And this is what His Excellency the Chairman, the governors, the owners of the institution is always, the dialogue is there to understand where we have to change in order for us to serve them better. The institutions, as Islamic Development Bank, they are definitely leading the strategy, and the strategy of the bank, always it is disseminated into the different entities, ICD, ITFC, and ISEC, and each from where they stand, they start amending their strategy in order for us to have that one strong solution. And here I cannot but stress, there is no more comprehensive financial solution at the level of the MDB as resilient and as strong as the Islamic Development Bank Group. We have the bank that is working on the sovereign side, working on the capacity building. We have ITFC that is leading here a very strong drive for financing the trade, development in our member countries and intra-trade. And we have the ICD that is there hand by hand working to finance the private sector. And ISEC, like you said, we have these strong tools to de-risk and to make it viable for investors to do business in our member states, and similarly for other institutions to trade with us and to expand the economies through additional trades that we are doing. When you look at the partners that we have here today, and I would like to stress about the private sector, it is very important to say that the TCC that you have mentioned was created in order for us to have one voice, one approach toward satisfying the requirement of the private sector that is there. It was started as an initiative by Engineer Hani, His Excellency, and then it became something at the level of the group. And we are very cohesive in nature and answering to the call of the member states. They are joint visits that we go to member states in order for us to understand their requirement. At the end, it is not something that we force upon a member states or a partner. It has to come from their own national development plan, from their need that is always changing with the requirement. And we talked about resilience here. Some member states, they have high level of resilience, and some member states, they are fragile, and they have low capacity to retaliate and to rebound. And as such, this is where our response becomes different. One thing that we have seen in our member states, and this is something that is at the heart of the TCC, our understanding that majority of the member states that we have, they are heavily indebted. And that indebtedness is making it very difficult for them to rebound from the crises that they have faced and they are facing right now. That level of indebtedness is making it very difficult for them with the increase in the interest rate globally for them to access the capital market. So collectively, we have to work in order for us to provide the solution that is viable in order for them to be able not just to repay the current debts, but in order for them to answer the call of the crises and to rebound, like I have said in that. At ISEC, we have realized that we cannot continue offering our traditional insurance product. This is why we have moved since the middle of last year in order for us to deliver structured insurance solutions where we are going to market, where we are now packaging and de-risking solutions that are there. And we have moved away from making the insurances that we have that are project focused. Now we have moved with the approval of our esteemed boards to start working to ensure budgetary purposes that are happening there. And that was extremely helpful during the pandemic because many member countries, they needed viable solutions and ready money in order for them to answer the call of the pandemic. And main support that we have provided, and we are very proud of that, is the support that we have done for the SME markets. SMEs are very important and critical to every economy, let alone in the least developed member countries that are there. The group as a whole, like I said, we are strong when we work together and we are aiming in that. You said it is one group, one goal. And this is how our approach is to our member states. And we work together in order to deliver on the mandate that we have as institutions.
Engineer Sumbul, as His Excellency Mr. Osama said, the TCC was a leapfrog in innovation and synergy for the whole bank. Please, from ICD and ITFC's point of view, can you answer the same question regarding...
Thank you, but you promised me that I will comment on Dr. Rania's point. I really want to say something that is to also include the great initiatives in Egypt. Almost in my 40 years, of development banking, I have not seen an initiative like the issuing a development report that includes all the partners in Egypt working in the development process. And this has really brought all of us together to see what others are doing. How can we really work together? How can we do co-financing? We have really benefited. I just wanted to clarify for that so much better. Let's say that IDB Group is a very unique group. It's not only South organization, but actually IDB Group is quite very distinctive by the way you saw it on the video. You have almost the complementarity between the mother, which we call the IDB, the mother institution. We're focusing on government infrastructure and long-term financing, but also with the development and the increase of the role of the private sector in the development process in member countries. IDB founders were very wise actually to start with the ISEC to really support really the export credit and also to attract investments in member countries. And later on, of course, ICD, they felt that we cannot go without really having an institutions that is devoted really for the development of the private sector by providing good products, financing, mega projects, strategic projects in very strategic, I would say, very strategic sectors like now talking about energy, water, and also, other renewable energies projects and so on. In addition of course, supporting the SMEs as one of them. Finally, ITFC came. So, honestly, I was also sharing this in the beginning that maybe there is a competition between us. Maybe I'm, somebody competing against. Really brought us, three of us together, by really working together under one platform, and at the same time, surprisingly enough, that we do have joint KPIs, and this is very new, by the way. We have joint KPIs to really show that we are together, are meeting the expectations regarding synergy among the group. And this is, of course, in my view, was really a very, very successful, experience over the last years. So synergy there is really important for all of us. If we want to talk about the institutions like, for example, ITFC applies the thought leadership style. You know, we try to always invest also on people, invest in technology, but also try to work with others. When I was really, asked to be in charge for the ICD, I led many missions together, and I could not see much better impact by the two teams working together. You know, when we are visiting member countries, we visited Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and Cote d'Ivoire, and so on. And the impact of this synergy and partnership, not only outside, but partnership within the bank, it is really so impactful. And I think that's quite an experience, for the whole group.
Dr. Rani would like to add
Thank you. First, I want to thank Engineer Hani Sumbul for that comment, and the idea of being able to showcase what the different partners are doing in one document has a lot of spillover effects. It shows the complementarity, it gives encouragement in terms of moving forward, and there is positive competition. Because for countries that are accessing finance, when there are more than one partners, we are also able to leverage and get the best deal out of this positive competition. And let me conclude by, you mentioned the book, Stakeholder Engagement Through Economic Diplomacy. For us, our economic diplomacy is based on 3 principles: multi-stakeholder platforms, bringing everybody together, being able to showcase our projects and getting the best deal from our development partners. The second is doing an ODA SDG mapping. So we took our concessional finance portfolio, mapped it to the SDGs, so that everybody can know how much they're contributing, not just in dollars, but where these dollars have contributed to the SDGs in the country. And then third, creating a narrative, people at the core of every project. This is key. That how many beneficiaries, and then projects in action. This conference is about public-private partnerships, and it's extremely important that as you are designing projects and trying to create these engagements between the public and private sector, then finally purpose as the driver, which is always the SDGs. And this is important even if we're talking about climate action. Climate is SDG 13, so therefore each and every point you are moving ahead, you are also contributing to the SDGs.
So first of all, we're coming to the end of our session. There's so much more to say. So my last question before we open for 5 minutes only of audience questions. Right now in the audience you have government officials, you have private sector, you have different multilaterals, you have member countries, you have the private sector. What is the biggest challenge that you see that you are facing to fulfill your mission in adding more resilience through the private sector? So each person, if they can answer that one question in 30 seconds.
I think it's a question that needs half an hour for me to answer, not just 30 seconds.
We just give them a taster, so afterwards during coffee breaks they find you.
First of all, everybody here that you mentioned them, they're partners, and this is how we would like to call them at the Islamic Development Bank Group. Everybody's a partner here with us in development. The most issue that is pressing from the part of ISEC is resource mobilization. And for us to see where multilateral development banks can work with ISEC, including the Islamic Development Bank, for us to give concession and financing. All of this talk in respect of us doing and executing projects and transactions of trade on the ground cannot happen if there is no concessional financing. Concessional financing is key, and from where I sit, ISEC has the tools to work with developmental institutions, with the private sector, with the exporters, in order for us to bring about development at an affordable cost to government and to the people of the member states.
Amazing point. Engineer Sumbul.
Yes, one answer is that, to really ensure to keep the momentum of this partnership under what we are seeing now, this frequent waves of crisis coming in and out. The most difficult is to keep this momentum going, because we need it. We need to keep this going so that we can also pass this. When we started, for example, the COVID-19 crisis, when we were facing, we thought that we would never be able actually to work. And alhamdulillah, we've been able to develop that kind of work and momentum to really keep serving our member countries. Our member countries today are facing tremendous challenges, you know, and definitely, these challenges are not just in a single country, but it is really a result of all these recurrence of these crises. So we need just to keep the momentum of our private sector, you know, activities and energy going on.
Dr. Rania, the one challenge.
I wouldn't call it a challenge, but I think that we need to always keep the trust. The credibility between the partners, the trust between the government and its partners is extremely crucial. As Engineer Hani mentioned, there are multi-crises. Everybody's trying their best, but every country has a resilient stock. So how can we together continue to partner, rely on each other, and keep the trust between us and the institutions and between us and our clients, which are private sector, citizens, etc.
أستاذ محمد، إذا شيء واحد تبغى تقوله على الصمود والمشاكل التي تريد أن تحلها لمساعدة البرايفت سيكتور.
نعم، الحاجيات ضخمة جدا، ودون الشراكات ودون التآزر الجهود لا يمكننا تحقيق تنمية مستدامة للقطاع الخاص. وتجربتنا مع المؤسسات الثلاث لمجموعة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية تجربة ناجحة، وعلينا أن ندعمها ونعززها في كل الدول الإفريقية والعربية ليمكننا من تحسين وتطوير مناخ الاستثمار وتقوية المعاملات التجارية الإقليمية جنوب جنوب. وشكرا.
الله يعطيكم العافية. ما عندنا وقت إلا لسؤال واحد فقط. إذا في سؤال تفضل. هو رفع يده أول واحد، تفضل. إلا إذا يعطونا الorganizers more time. Otherwise, it's one question.
My name is Hamed Hassouna. I am a banker. I'm working for International Trade Finance Bank called UBAF. We're partnering with ITFC, Isaac. We know them well, and they know us well. The change of mindset taking place in Saudi is quite impressive. However, it needs to be well spread out to cover innovation. You, as institution and as group, focus on material economics. The world is taking completely different direction, more about innovation, sharing economy, and what have you. I think you are now, as institution, have the means to lead in such direction. Innovation is the key, and this what will make such an economy and the Arab world economy as well as the Islamic world to different leap. Thank you.
So I think we all agree that innovation is really important. If anybody wants to take that comment.
Well, definitely, like I said before, we have to innovate ourselves. And innovation comes from education, starts at home, and this is what we are doing at the level of the group. We have great programs for our staff and for the management in order to be attuned with the different changes that are happening globally. And through our direct access to our partners, to the member states, the preferred credit status that we have, it forces us in order for us to comply to the changes that are happening there. Innovation happens as well in order the response that we have, and this is from the product development that we have at the level of the group. And this is something that is central with the Islamic Development Bank and the entity, and at the entity at the TCC level, and at the single entity space where we are working and operating. Changing business models have to be adopted. You mentioned it in your open remark, and we haven't touched upon it, artificial intelligence. This is where we have to adopt going forward. How are we as financial institutions, specifically on the sovereign side and the MDB side, are going to walk the walk of the private sector as they adopt artificial intelligence in their day-to-day dealing? Data that is being dumped on us on day-to-day basis. How are we going to decipher it? How are we going to use it? This is the absence of data at the level of the, the membership constitute a challenge for us to see how we can help member states from where we sit as multilateral development institution at the level of the group. So innovation is key. We have to start by ourselves, to educate ourselves, and to move in order for us to be able to have our member states be at par with the Western world.
Thank you so much. المشكلة إنه الوقت خلص. تفضلوا.
The benefits of having government to private sector work is what Mr. Osama said, and also from the respected person, that three things that can be done. Number one is the governments must really make use of the diversity that is happening in the private sector. Number two is innovation. Of course, this is another very important thing. They have more access to technology and innovation. Three, which is of course more actually investment in people, so that three of these things can be actually one of the major benefits from this PPP partnership with the private sector.
أستاذ محمد تفضل.
ربما الاستفهام الأول والمحوري هو كيف نطور سياسات عمومية ببلداننا لامتلاك قدرات شبابنا المختص في الرياضيات التطبيقية وفي الديجيتاليزيشن وفي الذكاء الاصطناعي وكل ما يتعلق بالالغوريثميك، لأن هذا الشباب الآن الكفء يصدر إلى كبريات الشركات العالمية. هم موجودين الآن بكاليفورنيا، موجودين بباريس، بلندن، بشنغهاي إلى آخره. فكيف علينا بشراكة بين القطاع العام والقطاع الخاص كيف نكون طاقات جديدة ببلداننا وتحديدها ببلداننا لفائدة حاجيات القطاع الخاص والقطاع العام، لأن عندنا مشكل خطير الآن هو كل الكفاءات الآن في هذه المجالات كلها تغادر بلداننا وتثري معاهد البحوث على الصعيد الدولي وكبريات الشركات العالمية. وشكرا.
دكتور رانيا، أنا راح أسألك بس سؤال إنه to touch upon all of the ideas. Everybody always talks about innovation, yet innovation is probably one of the biggest threats to job creation through artificial intelligence taking over. So not only do we have a brain drain, but we're also going to have normal people losing their jobs. Can you tell us a little bit about that and answer perhaps that?
Yes, we've moved from what is known as the digital divide between nations to now an extra, opportunity but challenge as well, and therefore it's very paramount, as Chairman mentioned, that governments adopt policies that do include artificial intelligence. We have, it's a double sword. The number of jobs that are going to be created because of AI, and I was just in the World Economic Forum job conference in Switzerland, and someone said people should not be worried about AI, but the people who are going to use AI. So this is the point, that AI is going to be a very important tool. It increases productivity, and that is very important for economies. But at the same time, the training that is required for that is not small, it's substantial. And unfortunately, the comparative advantage between countries is also going to be, to a large extent, defined by that, especially when we're talking about the private sector. So it's an additional, for countries that are lagging behind, it's an additional catch-up that needs to take place. And that all requires vision, but also resources. And that's why the debt stress that we see in many countries is also creating sand in the wheels of pushing forward when it comes to, as Engineer Hani mentioned, the momentum. We don't want to stop the momentum of reform, but unfortunately there are so many headwinds, and therefore the requirement of inclusive partnership and more solidarity in trying to push forward with reforms.
So thank you so much, everybody, for coming and attending. The excitement of the innovation, the private sector being able to drive growth, and yet at the same time, this underlying fear where there could be a lot of destruction as well. How to manage this? This is where the governments, the private sector, and the multilateral financial institutions can come, help, guide, and create collaborations that can stand for the growth and development rather than the loss. I'd like to thank my panelists for coming today and covering so many wide topics. I hope that the audience can then meet with each of those panelists during the coffee breaks to enable them to have more opportunities to talk about specific cases that can be helpful. And I also would like to ask the panelists to come for the last picture together. Allah yatikum al-afiyah, marra shukran. Thank you so much for attending. Allah.
Thank you very much for that insightful session. شكرا جزيلا. حضرات السادة والسيدات، أود دعوتكم لاستراحة القهوة لمدة 15 دقيقة، وذلك في منطقة الB2B على يمينكم. I would like to invite you now for a 15-minute coffee break at the B2B zone on your right. We have a 15-minute coffee break right now.